Hi everyone. This video is actually for parents or guardians of children who are genderqueer or non-binary or trans, questioning, or if you think that you have a child in your care who may be coming out to you about their gender identity at some point. If you think that your child may be trans or genderqueer, there's a really good chance you are correct. Just so you know, you're probably onto something. So doing your research now is a good move. So I got inspired to make this video because I saw, it was a person who I was non-binary. I don't specifically know if they stated their, any other identity. And they were out to their family for a year or two at this point and asked their mom for some insight about what it was like from the parents' perspective to have a kid come out to them, what maybe could have made it easier for the parent, or just explain it a little better, I guess, at the time the kid came out. And the mom said lots of good things, but some of what she said, I don't want to say I disagree with, but it kind of put a lot of responsibility on the kid to for the parent's emotional response, which not a fan of for a couple reasons. First of all, your kid, depending on their age, developmentally, they're just not ready to do that. The younger they are, the harder that will be for them. And number two, your kid is probably super concerned with their own well-being. You're their parent or guardian of some sort, and you're the person who's supposed to provide this unconditional, loving, trusting environment. And now your kid has to tell you something really big for them and really scary, and they are wondering if you're still going to provide that love and support. And sometimes they're wondering if you're going to kick them out of the house, because that happens. And especially older kids who have lots of, or even a little access to the internet, read and hear and see those stories, unfortunately, all the time. So we're going to assume that you are a super supportive parent or guardian, and you're just here to learn how to continue or be supportive in the event that this is your kid. So first of all, I had mentioned if you suspect your kid is trans, you're probably correct. Not always. I mean, there are kids who just don't like the things associated with their gender, and that's fine. But there are usually some other signs if kids give those signs at a young age. So a good way to express if you're not comfortable asking directly, it's an option. I mean, you can just say hey, do you feel like you're maybe transgender or genderqueer or not a girl or boy? Depending on their age, that can be a really great, how you present it can be really great, because it opens the door for the kid to say, oh, well, actually, you already knew, and gives them some opening. Maybe you're not comfortable with that, or you're not confident enough that you're reading those signs correctly, or your kid is really shy or whatever, doesn't talk to you about things a lot. You can just bring up anything in the news these days, actually. As much as we've been hearing about bathroom bills and those types of things, your kids have heard those things too. So you have an opportunity to just kind of nonchalantly talk about them, but talk about them in a way that shows your support of trans people and trans rights, which opens the door for your kid to, it gives them a signal that you're going to be an accepting parent or guardian, which is super important as well, because that's going to alleviate some of their anxiety around that. Okay, so your kid came out. Whatever emotions you're experiencing, as the adult in the situation, you need to try very hard to channel a little bit, some of that internally, maybe. And it's okay to say, I need a couple minutes to process this. But make sure what you're saying is supportive, that you're letting them know that you're there for them. Like, I'm gonna go on a side tangent because I occasionally will hear, actually kind of a lot here, people talk about the experience as a parent of feeling like they lost, like, oh, I lost a son, but then I gained a daughter. And I don't, and maybe this is because I am genderqueer, but I don't understand why that's any different. Like, you had a child, your child figured something out about themselves, they told you this thing, and you still have a child. So I don't know why your expectations are so different or tied so much to the kid's gender to begin with. And I don't say that to make you feel like your feelings are invalidated, but to give you some perspective about why that's super important to you that your kid was your son or your daughter versus just your child. So just something to think about if that's something you're experiencing as a parent. So some of what I'm about to say is going to be very dependent on your own resources, monetary resources, as well as where you live. If you're in a more rural versus urban versus suburban area, to some extent, maybe like the state you live in or city, how common queer people and issues are. And I talk a lot about being in a very queer friendly city to the extent that I go to other cities and realize how different it is. So prefacing all of this with that I understand that not everyone has access or the money to do everything that they would like to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ways you can be like tangibly supportive with your genderqueer trans kid. Number one, if they ask you to use different pronouns, do it. And it's okay if you mess them up. Just fix it and do it. I have, I don't know, 4 or 5 videos on this channel that talk about usually specifically my pronouns, which are they, them. But feel free to give those a watch. There's something to talk about how to get it right if you are a cis person. It will make a huge difference to your kid. I mean, me as an adult, it makes a huge difference to me that my friends actively use those pronouns. If your kid is changing their name or thinking about changing their name, don't, even if you feel some loss there, or like maybe it was a family name or it had some meaning that you really liked, don't necessarily put that on your kid. Instead, talk to your kid about some possibilities. If they have not already picked a name out, you can give them alternative names you considered when you were having them, or family names that might be similar or mean a lot, or that you just names you really like or that you see in them. And if your kid hates all of your suggestions, that's fine. You know, people have nicknames, people go by names like their middle name all of the time. It's not, people not using their original birth name is not quite as uncommon as it may at first seem. So kind of remember that in the back of your head. And again, do your best. I mean, I grew up with siblings, so I know that parents just tend to like list all of their kids' names anyways whenever someone is needed or in trouble. So we know that parents will mess up our names, but do your very best all of the time. In public, in private, at school, if the kid wants to be out at school. If your kid wants to be out of school, you're about to go to bat for them, and there may or may not be a struggle with school boards or PTAs or other parents. So that leads me into the next thing, which is look for local resources as much as possible. Whether that's a gender therapist for your kid, possibly a family therapist. If you have LGBTQ resources in or near your community, they can help with sometimes with therapists. I know my local one does offer, I don't know if it's completely free, it may be just super discounted, like gender therapy to qualifying folks. They would also have resources for like getting your kid access to the right bathroom or asking teachers to call your kid different pronouns or any of those types of resources. They're out there. You might have to dig a little bit, again, given your community. But it's one of the things you do for your kids, right? You would go to bat for them if they were being made fun of or bullied for any other reason. It's no different. And you also have an opportunity to model for other parents that it's okay to have a queer kid. It's fine. There are lots of great things about your kid that have nothing to do with their gender identity or their sexuality, if that's also at play here. So maybe some less intense things you can do, now that I've got the big ones out of the way, are buying your kids clothes that are like gender affirming for them. If your kid wants to start wearing dresses, buy them dresses. If you can afford it, you might need to go to the thrift store. They might need to wait until the one time that, you buy school clothes once a year, whatever your family situation is. Give them some hand-me-downs to hold them over. But you have to buy kids clothes all the time anyways because they outgrow them. So be okay with taking them shopping in the opposite gender clothing sections if that's what they want. Just be supportive of that, because I think kids anyways, like I really hate like uniform policies in schools, because I think any, like especially teenagers, really express themselves through their appearance. So for trans people, that expression is really important for how they're perceived for their gender. And so to combine that with how teenagers are also concerned with their appearance, and how they're perceived, it's a huge, 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 huge issue for your kid, especially at that age level. And then finally, like grooming, or I guess beauty products. These are things that you are going to buy anyway, like soaps, shampoos, that kind of stuff. So if they want to experiment with, maybe they've always used like pine scented man soap, and if they want to try some flower scented girl soap. Soaps don't actually have genders, but sometimes those little things can help, like that routine of, if you have a gender fluid kid and one day they feel more girly or more like a boy, something like just using a different smelling soap or whatever can like mentally do something to help them. So those are some little things that you can do for your kid. I'm not really getting into medical issues because this video is getting long, but if your kid has not started puberty, puberty blockers, is that what they're called? Hormone blockers for puberty. It's nothing that's irreversible, but it can prevent some of the changes that your kids may not want or maybe are unsure of at this point. So that is definitely something to talk to therapists and medical professionals about. So I don't know anything really about them other than what I just said. And again, with medical stuff, there are going to be limitations for everyone, but be as supportive and understanding with your kids. Listen to them. Let them be the expert on being trans. You're going to learn from them ask them what it's like for them, what you can do to help them if they have dysphoria. I have a friend who, if I'm having really bad dysphoria, I can just say that to him, and we can joke around a little bit, and even that can kind of sometimes help mellow it out a little bit. Sometimes it's just terrible for the day. But listen to your kid. Do some research. There's a ton of stuff out there. If you have questions for me, I am more than happy to answer them. Leave a comment in the comment section. If you're a kid who wants to come out to your parents, feel free to send them this video and say, this is what's right or wrong about what I said. Maybe there's something I said that there are kids out there that say, no, that would be horrible, or I wouldn't want my parent to do that. It's okay. It's from my perspective as a genderqueer adult who has come out to other family, not parents because they're not around, but other family and all of my friends. And I have some like developmental background for kids. So just some ideas and perspectives and ways that you as an adult and a parent can make your kids coming out and then their following transition, whatever that looks like for them, as positive as possible. And I'm going to close by saying, I did a lot of research for a class recently in the past few months all about gender nonconforming children. And there's a lot of mental health you'll find with a lot of trans people, like a lot of mental health issues. However, there have been a couple studies recently that have looked at kids who have supportive parents who like let them dress in whatever gender they want or use whatever name or pronouns, and those kids have the same or less instances of mental illness type issues or depression or anxiety than cisgender kids. So there's real like science backing how important it is for you to accept your kid and their gender identity, whatever it is. So until next time, good night.